Hey, Sadie, so talk to us. What's one piece of advice you can give us this morning?
This is a very loaded question, but the one piece of advice I would give to the listeners out there is the importance of technology integration in a practice, making sure that all of your systems are talking to one another and focusing primarily on like one or two manufacturers that can offer this integration. Seems that, with staffing shortages being so prevalent today, it's really challenging to bring on a new employee and have them learn 5 to 6 different softwares. So if we're able to take all of our technology and have a streamlined integration workflow, I think that would be my biggest piece of advice, to focus on that and not just piecemeal everything together.
So then, to you, Sadie, what's the number one mistake practices make when trying to integrate new technology?
The mistakes that I see most would be on the fly decisions for practice management software. They're not able to do their full research and diving in deep, because that's going to be the lifeline, the bloodline of your practice. That's where money's coming in, coming out. And if you're not doing your due diligence on that, or if there's no proper data migration from
Mhm.
maybe a previous legacy practice management software to a new one, the migrations can be all messy. So I think doing your research prior, if you're going to be transitioning any data into a new software, doing that research and how that's going to look and how it's going to affect the outcome, or doing your research on what practice management software best fits you and what can be integrated in all of your imaging, since those two are the top two softwares that practices will be using.
When doing research, what are some things we should keep in mind or questions we should ask ourselves that typically when you're looking at a practice who did this, you're like, you didn't ask yourself this question?
Most I hear is they're asking their colleagues, right? All dentists are going saying, hey, what do you use? What works for you? But what might work for someone might not work best for your practice, since every practice is individualized. I'd say using your like key opinion leaders in your area, focus on like even your like sales representatives, consultants. There's a big team of consultants out there from the
Mhm.
Academy of Dental Management Consultants that have years and years of experience of kind of tailoring which software solution would be right for your practice. So utilizing, I think, those research and then asking questions to the actual software company of how they're going to handle objections and staff support, how they're going to handle the conversion, just all these questions that everyone loves all the bells and whistles of the practice management software, but they're not actually thinking of how it will directly affect their daily efficiency without asking these questions.
That's true. So then, why do so many dentists invest in new software or equipment but never fully utilize it? I remember when I worked at some practices, it was bells and whistles. It even got me, right? I was like, let's do this. And then down the road, I'm like, I never used the bells and whistles sometimes. So why?
That's the thing. I think lack of training, that's a big thing. I've been in the training realm for 10 years now, and there's not a high level of importance put on training in most practices because one, they're going to have to close down. That's production time that they're having to spend away from seeing patients. However, it's the most valuable because you're able to then fully utilize all the bells and whistles and things that you've invested. Because if you want something just like a plain platform, then you don't need to go with all the bells and whistles and all the fancy things. Your practice will grow and you can grow into it. So I think focusing on team training is probably the most, and investing in the employees to make sure that they can be most efficient in the software.
I like how you said investing in the employees because what do we do in this scenario, Sadie? And you've maybe seen this when it comes to office managers who, let's just say, we've been using, I don't know, like Eagle software, I don't know, like a specific software for a really, really long time. And we want to bring in a new software. We do the training, but then the office manager's like, no, we got to go back to our original. And it kind of almost convinces the practice owner, like, you're right, we messed up. Let's go back to the original stuff.
And I've seen that happen a lot. If the team is not on board to make this transition, it will never be a successful transition. So I think doing pre-planning, pre-training before the system is fully implemented is what never happens. It's kind of like, here, we bought this new software. We're going to go live with it next week. They pull the plug and it's just like everyone's frantic. They don't know what's going on. So having a clear implementation timeline of learning all the specifics of the software as you go. So then it comes time for go live day. No one is upset and saying, you know what, we need to just go back to the old software. And really to know the objective of why maybe that doctor, the decision owner, made that decision to move to that software. I think that's not clearly communicated to this team and the staff a lot of the times. So they just feel like, oh, it's something that we, now have to do. They made this decision without us. So I think involving the team is really important to empower them to be on board with the decision that's made to switch to a new software.
Interesting. So then should the team be on board before looking or purchasing? Meaning like you've gotten the ear, you've heard it, but now do you discuss it and say, hey guys, I'm thinking to look into a new software, a new something, right? Whatever that integrate. And does the team always know best? Or I don't know, what are your thoughts?
The fun little game I play with offices that are looking at switching is I say, write down a wish list. If you could have a wish list of the top 5 things that you wish the software would do better. So take what you're currently doing and what is the most challenging, what's taking you the most time, and what's your wish? What could make your life easier? And if this new product can check all those boxes, or most of them, then I think then it's selling the team on like, okay, this is a good decision for everybody. Now, I know that some dentists don't want to have their team really make that decision, but I think it's important because they're going to be in the software the most, especially for all these new builds, these new practices. They don't have paper charts, right? It's all electronic. So that means tons of software use. So yeah, I think the wish list has been a good tool for me to let, these practice owners know, hey, like, what is your wish list? What could you do better? Or what would you want the software to do better? And then those kind of are guiding questions to a new product to see if it's the right fit for the practice.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's part of the pre-planning process that you mentioned?
Yeah, I would say pre-planning. Yeah.
So if you could break down for us, how does that process look like? What do we need to do for pre-planning?
First would be if you're going to be doing a data migration or if it's a brand new startup. So if you have a legacy, if you bought a practice from a previous owner and they have an existing database, the migration process is different for every software manufacturer. So they will have certain things the data can pull over from the legacy software into the new. So that's a very important step to go through, making sure that whatever data you want to come over will come over correctly. So that would be step number 1 for a data migration. Step number 2 would be to plan the training. So planning the training curriculum and guidelines as far as not just all at once. You're not going to just do a training the day before you're supposed to use the new software. You're planning it weeks ahead of time to make sure that everyone is getting focused, individualized training and can focus on that training. I see a lot of offices just say, hey, I need you to watch all these online videos by next week. And then no one will. They're not going to go home and watch them. Maybe dedicate an hour of the day without any patience that employee can sit there and focus on the videos. And then if it's a new startup business, you're going to need to pre-plan the training before you just go live with it. And then also, just like dentists, we have our recare patients. We know we see patients back in 3, 4, 6 months for our pro fees. And that's kind of the same thing you need to do for training. We need to have a 3, 4, 6 month follow-up to be sure that everyone is utilizing the system correctly, because the old saying, junk in, junk out. If you're trying to look at analytics to then maybe open up another practice in the future, you need to have solid numbers from your software to be able to know if you're able to grow your practice or how you're able to increase your profitability.
Okay, interesting. So then what are the most common bottlenecks that slow down the efficiency instead of improving it when it comes to this?
I would say bottlenecks for efficiency would be, I really think team training is not done correctly, or there's no time allocated to it. The migrations can be really difficult as well when they're trying to transfer data from an old system to new. Sometimes the transitions don't go correctly and they can take weeks or months. So I have seen some new practice owners say, yep, the doctor that I bought this practice from used this software, I want to use this one. And they think it's going to be easy just to transfer and then go and then start next week. But I've seen some migrations take up to 2 months based upon how well the data is transferred over. And again, you don't want to do it as quickly as possible and just get the data in, because again, you're not going to get the accurate reporting that you need down the road. So taking that time preemptively. So I would say 2 to 3 months is a really good timeline before you decide to just switch and pull the plug and switch to something new.
So then do you ever see that where it's not accurate, even though the migration, you know what I mean? Like, what's the scenario there? Why does that happen?
Each software is either balance forward accounting or line item accounting. And so if you're switching from one software that uses a certain accounting method to another, a lot of times the balances won't transfer correctly. So sometimes they won't even transfer balances, but then your team is having to work out of two softwares to try and collect, all of the money and insurance from one software and then start new in another. So that's one thing that I see that doesn't work well is balance transferring, which is not going to give you accurate AR reporting. I've also seen a lot of demographics not come over correctly as far as male, female, other. Insurance information won't transfer sometimes. That takes a lot of time to input every single insurance plan for every single patient. So those are the things that I say pre-plan for that, because if you don't have your data right away, you're going to need 2 to 3 months to get your system accurate, team trained before you actually go live with software. And I see this happen all the time with new practice owners where they're just not pre-planning and they just say, okay, starting tomorrow, we're using this new software.
By any chance, Sadie, do you have a pre-planning checklist?
I do.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I do.
So
yes, I have a whole timeline and checklist. Yes.
Wonderful. Could it be available to our listeners?
Of course. Yeah,
Oh,
I'd be happy
awesome.
to share.
Awesome. So that's going to be in the show notes below. Awesome. So then we can follow that along and make sure it's going according to plan. So it's interesting. I never knew you needed like 2 to 3 months.
I mean, that's the most ideal. You can obviously expedite it, but the offices that have used a pre-planning kind of checklist, way better, way more successful implementation than just saying, okay, now we're using this. Because then you're right, down the road, the office manager is going to say, I don't want to use this. This isn't working for me. And then you just spent 2 months of inputting data into a software that you're now not going to use to transfer it back. So pre-planning and training, 100% needed.
It's key. Interesting. So then to you, what is one outdated habit from this whole process that is costing practices the most money where you're like, you got to stop doing that?
An outdated habit that's costing them money as far as like the practice management side of things?
Yeah, it could be the practice management side of things, or more so have you ever heard of the expression like paralysis by analysis? We're going to switch over one day, but let's keep studying up on it kind of a thing, right? Or maybe you're trying to switch over, but then you go back and it happens all the time. I'm going to do another one. I'm going back. So maybe it's because of an outdated habit, or maybe they're just, I don't know. You know what I mean?
I think one, it can be really a lack of training. Again, it really boils down to that, because if I'm in an office and I'm sitting down knee to knee, eye to eye with these individuals and can relate to them and train them on their new processes and protocols and how it's going to be more efficient for them, if you show them that aha moment of why this is better, then they understand. If you just say you have to do this and they have no reason of the outcome of why it's going to be better, I see that. And habits are hard to break. Like old habits are just hard to break. You're used to one thing and it's hard. But there's so much resources now online that if you're willing and able to reach out and get those resources, I feel like you can empower yourself to be better. But again, it's focused on how much like effort and focus is going to be on making the change.
Yeah.
But I really think it's just, old habits. It's hard to change. Change is scary for everybody. It's not easy. But if you have the right team in place and you have the correct training and timeline and planning, then I feel like it can be pretty easy to make that transition.
Nice. Okay. We discussed quite a bit about training, right, with the team. Now, what's the right way to do this, to train a team? Like, what's the right way to train a team when introducing a new practice management software or a software update, as opposed to, because I feel like training could be its own subject where we try to do it and then you see personalities come out, or you maybe see someone who's, man, you just really hate this. Like, I'm giving you all the answers and you hate this. Why do you hate it so much? What do we do in that scenario?
For team training, I always focus it on front office training and then clinical training. And then I'll have a training with everybody and also a training with the doctor owner specifically. So it's broken into 3 segments and sometimes even almost 4. Sometimes I will segment the hygienists too of their own kind of training, since they do a whole bunch of different clinical things than the dental assistants will do. And then the practice owner with a lot of reporting with the office manager. So I think breaking team training down into segments can be really impactful, because if you have a team training with everybody and I'm going over insurance aging reports, the hygienists and the clinical assistants are not going to be interested. They're going to lose focus and they're not going to want to be there. So I do see, okay, let's get everybody together for team training. And then we're talking about something that doesn't apply to everybody. So I
Mm-hmm.
think making it focused on their workflow, what they do, how to improve it, that's going to be the biggest win for everybody when it comes down to training. So I think that would be what I see the most is doing a full team training versus breaking it into individualized training.
Gotcha. Could we talk about, so for example, if we were to switch over to a practice management software, right? What do you see the most common objections from back office and then from front office and then even from the doctor?
Mostly I see a lot of the objections are going to be like, well, it can't do this. It doesn't do this. I wanted to do this, when actually it's probably a lack of understanding of the software. So they're so used to doing it one way, they're just not taking time to see if it actually does it in the new software, because maybe it's just a different workflow or a different way. So I do see that objection the most. But again, if we go back to that wish list of like how you want it to be done, and then how you can find your new method and new methodology to do it, I think helps. A clinical team, the biggest thing I see is if a practice switches to a new practice management software and they're not sure that it integrates with their imaging software, this is a huge roadblock for the clinical team, because the clinical team is going to want to seat the patient, open the chart, take x-rays, go back to the chart and do all the notes and go forward. If they're having to stop that, open up another software, search the patient, add the patient, it's a huge roadblock. So a lot of that's when I talked about the integration piece in the beginning, is just making sure that your practice management software can integrate with your imaging software so that the whole team is happy, because maybe the software they were on originally integrated and now this new software does not. So the clinical team will put up an injection for that.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's almost like, let's just say I'm scrolling through Facebook or I'm scrolling through Dental Town or something, and I see like a software and I'm like, I love this software. I'm getting it. I should consult my team first, do the wish list, and then say, okay, maybe I don't need it or something different, right?
Yep. Check the integrations and see what their migration process looks like.
All
Do
that.
all of your research first, saying, oh, this looks like the perfect software. I want to jump in and buy it.
Okay. So then what are the must-have software tools that should integrate with a dental practice management software for peak efficiency?
One will be a patient communication system. So making sure your patients are being texted and emailed for appointment reminders, communication systems, sending out blast campaigns, being able to reach your patients through that communication platform, I think is a huge plus. There's still many practices out there that don't have that, and they're just manually doing phone calls, which I agree that there's that kind of like TLC, patient touch, by making that phone call. But in today's world, everyone wants a text or email. They want to book online. They want to have that control outside of business hours when the office isn't there. So that would be one, patient communication system. Two, I would say just all the integration pieces of the software, like what it can integrate with. Will it integrate with your intraoral scanner, with your imaging, your CBCT, making sure that that piece is together, because that creates a really efficient workflow. Lastly, like there's so much new AI softwares out there that are integrating into softwares. I think that's a big piece too. I think AI is, it's kind of in its beginning infancy stage. Some offices are adapting to the technology rather quickly. Some are kind of like scared of it. But I think that it's important to make sure that your software is AI capable at some extent for the future of when you want to implement that technology.
I like it. Okay. So making sure it's ready for that. So then to you, what's the most underutilized features that could save practices hours every week?
That's a broad scope of everything. I would say the most underutilized would be scheduling efficiencies. So a lot of softwares have unscheduled lists or call list, quick call lists, ASAP lists, where if your schedule somehow falls apart one day, you have a really quick list to pull from to move patients sooner, to keep your schedule full for production. And I see a lot of times patient or offices using sticky notes or like an Excel spreadsheet that they're going to, and they're like manually making this list. But pretty much all practice management softwares have the capability of tracking this and doing this internally, saving them time from writing an Excel spreadsheet or sticky notes all over their desk. So I would say probably scheduling efficiency would be the most underutilized, or one of the most underutilized.
Gotcha. On the practice management or the software.
Yeah.
So then how can a practice management software integrate with billing, insurance verification, and patient communication for a seamless workflow? How does that look like?
So if you have a server-based practice management software, you're most likely going to have to contact a third-party company that will offer a patient communication system. So that will be a separate kind of subscription that you're paying that will integrate with the software. Whereas a lot of the cloud-based softwares now have it all built in. So it's kind of an all-in-one software. And that's why a lot of offices are switching to cloud-based. And that's the biggest kind of implementation that I'm kind of talking about, is going from a server-based software to cloud. And that's why we need this checklist to plan appropriately. The all-in-one cloud softwares I love. I think that it saves a lot of money from trying to piecemeal in, oh, I want, like a company like Weave for my phones, and I want this other patient communication system for my marketing, and I want this AI system for my notes, and I want this over here. Now you've just been subscriptioned to death, and there are platforms out there that just offer all in one. So I'd say that would be what I would recommend, is just all in one for sure.
Okay, interesting. I like that a lot. So then, to you, practice management software, what would be the one then, or a couple of them, or to you, if we were to come to you, you're looking for a specific, is there anything where it's like, hey, Sadie, this is the type of practice I am. What do you recommend? And then this is the type of practice I am. I recommend this one then, kind of a thing?
Yes, totally. First, it's all going to depend on if you can have cloud-based software, the building infrastructure, and your internet. In some areas, they don't have the infrastructure and internet capabilities to run cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a limitation for some. So I always say check that on the mainland, where I'm here in Hawaii. So it's different out here, but on the mainland, that's probably not a huge issue, but in some rural areas, probably. And then two, the one I would probably recommend, well, there's lots of them that I would recommend for different situations, but making sure that the internet can handle it. And then I really do love a few of them. So I really love CareStack. CareStack seems to be a very robust Swiss Army knife of practice management systems, inexpensive compared to some of the other ones as far as their subscription monthly. I think their implementation team is phenomenal, and they really drive training. They really focus a lot on team training, which some of the other softwares just give you an online platform and say, here you go
Mm-hmm.
train yourselves. I think Curve is really wonderful. Dentrix Ascend, there's EagleSoft Fuse, and they all have something a little bit different. So if you're specialty for endo, there would be specific practice management softwares I'd recommend. If you're pedo, I would recommend different ones. But those would be my top all-in-one kind of softwares. And then everyone loves server-based Open Dental. That seems to be a very popular one as well.
So if it was CareStack, what would be I guess you could say target audience, but who would be like, hey, this is the perfect fit? If I'm looking to Sadie right now, I'm like, hey, which one do you recommend? This is what I need to look at. And then I come back to you with that, and you're like, oh, this is your CareStack.
I'd say GPs and pedo would be my top two that I would recommend CareStack to. I think for other specialties, ortho, oral surgery, endo, there's probably other softwares that would be better fit for those, but definitely any general practitioner or pedo, this CareStack software fits perfectly for.
Nice. And you mentioned implementation team. What is that?
They assign you specific people that are there with you from the start to the finish. They're the ones that will answer all the questions initially. They will help you plan for a data migration if that is happening. They'll walk you through everything. They'll make sure that the team is being trained and will answer any questions. And they really help kind of guide that timeline, kind of what I was talking about. So I think that's really important. Whereas some other softwares will just say, okay, here you go. Here's your software, call us if you need us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having a team that can really rally around the practice is really important.
Gotcha. Okay. So then when it comes to this, and I guess the future, and we mentioned AI a little bit, but what role will AI and automation play in the next evolution of practice management software and practice management?
Currently, the voice activation, like AI receptionist to answer phones, I think that's huge. To triage a lot of the calls that are coming in. And then my most favorites are for AI perio charting. AI perio charting, which is huge. A lot of hygienists love it because no one ever helps them perio chart. The assistants are always busy. They can't get help. And then the notes, the clinical notes are just, I've demoed so many different softwares for AI, Scribe, clinical notes. It's mind-blowing. It's like ChatGPT for dental. And it just saves so much time and energy with all of your clinical notes. So those would be the top three AI features that will revolutionize the practice management software for sure.
Nice. Okay. Now, Sadie, is there any tech out there that we maybe third party, right, or so forth, that you feel personally is kind of unnecessary, or maybe it'll add like a smidget to your top line or bottom, you know what I mean? But you don't really need it. Is there anything else?
Yes, I think what I see in some practices is they will have two different patient communication softwares where they got sold with, okay, this one does text message and emailing, but this one does all your social media marketing. But
Mhm.
really, they can do all the same things. I think that having a practice management communication system that does social media is, I would say you could go without it. I think that there are better companies geared towards dental marketing if you're looking at that aspect rather than trying to do it through one of those companies. It's very limited in what it can do for marketing and how the outreach is on social media. It's kind of
Mhm.
a templated thing. It doesn't use a very robust algorithm for social media. So I would say, you could probably do without having a practice management system that they promise you all of the SEO and all of this. It's basic tech. It's not advanced. Whereas there are dental companies out there or dental marketing companies that can really improve your rankings online and really drive in new patients.
Gotcha. Okay, so if that's the add-on, if it's like, hey, we
Yeah.
do social media, you're like,
Yeah. And
not really feeling.
websites.
Yeah. Okay, interesting, interesting. Now, if a dentist isn't on a cloud-based practice management software this year in 2025, are they already falling behind?
I don't think so. No, there's reasons for server based. I think internet security, number one, if you're not going to invest in an IT company that can secure your firewalls and keep you really safe on the internet, then I think it's safer to have server based. And
Hmm.
then, like I said, there are some rural areas that they won't be able to have cloud based. So, no, I think that it's not falling behind. But if you're able to have a cloud software, I feel like you'll save money instead of buying all these additional add-on softwares that you kind of need for that software. You'll save money going cloud. But I definitely think server-based will stay here for a very long time.
Awesome. So then, to you, what's one tech investment mistake that practices should avoid at all costs? So besides the social media, right? Like specifically tech investment mistake.
So I am a huge fan of numbers and looking at ROI. And so if a piece of technology is not going to produce the ROI that I need to pay for that tech, then I say you don't need it. There's like a few lasers on the market that I'm like, how many procedures are you really going to be using for this? I do see a lot of startups invest in patient communication systems to do text and emails and everything for their patients. But if they have no patients, it's a brand new startup, they're paying $300-400 a month to outreach to 20 people. Don't pay for
Mhm.
that system until you have like a good base of patients that it's actually reaching to utilize that technology. So I think looking at the return on investment of the tech before you bring it into the practice is my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the times, at least for me sometimes, yeah, I get sold on, oh my gosh, I can make this much. This is how much we're going to be able to make. And then I buy it. And I don't really ever keep track. I don't even know
No
if,
one ever keeps track. Yeah.
yeah, I don't ever really keep track of it. I'm like, I think it's made us money. I hope it's made us
Yeah.
money. I can't say for sure I'm implementing everything 100% though. You know what I mean? So we should do what?
So come up with some sort of tracking system. So if it's a certain technology that's tracking a certain procedure, then you need to, run monthly that report of how much of that procedure did you do, the quantity, how much revenue was brought in from the procedure, and then what your payment is. Maybe like, let's say you're financing this piece of tech, your payments, and are you actually breaking even? Or are you making money?
Mhm.
So we do this a lot of time with CBCTs because a lot of dentists are like, I don't really need it, or maybe I don't need it. But the ROI is there. That's one piece of technology that 100% you won't lose money on a CBCT. And that's easily tracked because CBCT has its own ADA CDT code that you can bill out in your software and then track it weekly and monthly to see
Mhm.
if that's happening. So creating some sort of tracker, also nitrous in a practice, offices that offer nitrous, I feel like nobody tracks that either. How many
Mhm.
tanks they're buying versus how much is actually being used and billed to the patient. So I see a lot of offices like breaking even or losing money on nitrous as well. So track the codes if you can. You can even generate like kind of like a fake code in your practice management system for something that may not be a procedure code, but you're utilizing it daily to then track that quantity or that revenue generated from that technology.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So then how will AI-driven decision making change how dentists manage treatment plans, scheduling, and finances?
One of the cool AI things that I recently stumbled upon is it will go through your daily appointment schedule and it will identify, the AI will identify who's due for x-rays. And then also it will go through their perio charts and it will identify if anyone has been undercoded or overcoded in hygiene.
Oh, wow.
So if there are pockets of 4 and above, lots of bleeding, but they were coded as a prophy, it's going to identify that that patient might need to be an SRP perio patient. So it's kind of scrubbing your patient data for you to present better treatment planning opportunities for you and the team without having to spend lots of time researching every patient. And then insurance eligibility. It's becoming better and better researching eligibility for patients to save a lot of time so we can make sure we maximize the patient benefit per appointment.
Nice. Okay. CareStack does all that, or?
Yeah, CareStack has a lot of those features. Yeah.
Easy peasy then. Awesome. Are there
Yeah.
actually any practice management platforms creating more inefficiencies instead of solving them, or?
I think it's all user error. Like, however it's being used can cause more inefficiencies. But for the most part, I think if you're utilizing it correctly and how it's designed, because that's one thing when I go into some practices, they'll create this crazy way to do something in the software that the software is not designed that way to utilize it.
Yeah.
And so they come up with this cool, like, oh, well, we track it this way. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. That's not how the software is designed. If you change it and utilize it this way, but they get creative. Everyone gets creative when they can't figure out how they want to use it. They'll find their own way. But again, that can create an inefficiency in its own by utilizing it how it's meant to be utilized.
Awesome. And the last question, any final piece of advice that you would like to give to our listeners regarding this?
Yeah, I would just say reach out to, your resources. Don't just get sold with things online. Don't get sold by the sales rep who's promising you the world when it's not going to be, a great fit for your practice. So just really do your due diligence. I have a lot of resources I'm happy to share. I'm so thankful to be on this podcast and share kind of some knowledge and wisdom. So I'd say reach out to individuals that kind of are in this space and can help you.
Nice. Awesome. Sadie, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. My company is called Office Swell. I'm based in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm all over Facebook, Instagram, and my website, officeswell.com.
It's awesome. So that's going to be in the show notes below. So thank you, Sadie, so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you.